Jerry and I've known each other for years, and let me tell you, during that time, Jerry was a godsend to the cities. He understood how we worked, he was responsive whenever we had needs, and he just really cared about our communities. So I'm not surprised that he took that level of expertise and is now on the platform in front of this issue. And I know that everybody keeps coming to me and saying, when you guys gonna do this and that and that. We've been doing a lot, but the problem is that all our municipalities is staffing. Is staffing. Having the right people in the right place that can actually take your product and say, how does this get in the city or the county? But I think somebody like Gary and some of the other great people I met last night, I think you guys can help us. But we just got to figure out how. That we don't, because you don't talk to me, because, honey, my kids gave up on asking me stuff. It's been a really busy time for Fontana, but it wasn't that it wasn't planned that way. I got my teeth sharpened when I was just working in Upland and living in Fontana, was getting involved in the community. And my first official item that I got a chance to work on was the general plan in 2000, 1999, 2000. I got appointed to the general plan committee. After being appointed, they made me vice chair. And that is one thing I believe in, is always establish a plan. You got a plan, you have a vision, you got a plan, then all you got to do is implement it. So I tell people all the time, they say, when are you going to go away? I said, no, I can't leave yet. I'm living out that original plan. It was a 20-year plan, and guess what? It's 2022. And we've revised it. So you guys are stuck with me for a few more years. But part of that plan was, what do we do with what's already established in the previous plan? People get all worked up about warehouses. All they can say is warehouses. Most of the buildings in Fontana and in this region are not warehouses as we knew them in the 40s. They're manufacturers. They're, what do you call them? Groups that have come together for different reasons. We have guys walking around in one of those big buildings with white coats on and glasses. They're research and developers. It's not unusual for Suburbans, about 5 black Suburbans, to pass by me on Sierra, where they're taking somebody high and mighty to one of those buildings because they just found something. We have biotech, medical. Those buildings represent lifelines for this country. But the aggravation did get pretty bad 3 years ago when COVID hit. Who would have ever thought that COVID would start everybody? I was afraid to order on Amazon. I kept telling my kids, no, they're going to steal my credit card information. One of my sons, who will not be named, said, Mom, what do you care? You're always at a negative balance anyway. When they were little, I used to say, I can't buy that. My account is at negativity. But people went crazy. Everybody was ordering. So we even had community meetings to give people information about this phenomenon, and we couldn't even be heard for the prime trucks back and forth. I said, you guys are kidding me, right? But with that said, we decided that we would put all the ordinances and codes in one place. If you're a developer, you love when you come into a city and say, I want to build 200,000 square feet building. What are the standards? And we don't point to 7 people anymore. We give you a document. So when the Attorney General decided to sue us, I just laughed because we had already started working on this document. And I said, bring it. We're ready for you. And once we delivered that document, even he had to admit, you're doing what I want you to do, because they're all factual, they're all laws. So, energy. We put a lot of energy saving type product methods in that ordinance. And Robert Torres is our public affairs manager here. If you like a copy of that ordinance, he can give him your card and we'll send it to you. But in there, all buildings have to be solar ready. All buildings over 400,000 square feet that provide solar power, it has to be power 100% of the non-refrigerated portions of the facility, including the parking lot and the landscaping. It requires that portions of the building's rooftop that is not covered with solar panels or other utilities shall be constructed with light-colored roofing material with a solar reflective index. And this goes on and on. This is a scientific thing. Also, they had to identify a location for the future electric truck location. We were talking last night. These so-called electric trucks are going to be here probably next year if this keeps going on. So we have to be ready. We required at least 10% of all passenger vehicle parking spaces to be electric or EV ready. And we also asked for 5% of all passenger vehicle parking spaces for the people that are just coming in and out that at least have a working level 2 with a quick charge EV charging station. We're requiring electric powered tools, forklifts, and pressure washers. During construction, we want electric powered construction vehicles, and it goes on, units. But before we had like little extras we would condition the developers to do when they built these buildings. We included. People have no idea how much landscaping can really help your project. So we're asking for larger trees. Don't come running up in there with the little 15-gallon trees that are gonna take me to be 90 before they grow up. We're requiring larger trees, drought tolerant, larger canopies to shade parking areas, and we also want biogenic emission type ground-based heat-resistant landscaping. Now go to Home Depot and say that and see what they tell you. Then the cool surface treatments we're requiring, but we adopted a tree planting ordinance that says we will plant 1,000 trees a year. We already have over 49,000 trees throughout the city, not counting the trees that are around businesses. People have no idea how important treescapes are. So people are saying Fontana's not energy efficient. Fontana's not making those places be energy efficient. Yes, we are. So that document is our Bible, and it's extended itself to other construction that's coming to town. So we're trying to do whatever we can do to make a difference. People just think I don't believe in the environment. I got my start in my career working on the environment. I did the first recycling program in Upland. We have oil and all of that good stuff, but we also conditioned customers there to make sure they were doing the right thing. But we have to work together on these issues. If we don't, we won't have a planet for our grandchildren. I worry about that a lot. Our meeting just now, we're looking at the buses and the transit systems. I think the bigger issue is people feel safe, and we want our residents to feel safe. But let's just be honest, and I had this discussion with some people last week. We all mostly came from LA. People act like they've never seen trucks on a highway before. You would not believe when we have those discussions, so many trucks. I grew up in South Central, and we had a lot of trucks. So we just ask people to be safe when they're driving around these trucks. And it's gonna even get scarier when you see these electric trucks. They look like big monsters rolling down the highway, somewhat like the cars they're building. So at this point, Gary, I guess we have time for questions. On top of that, I think we need to also be in a position to have some patience. There are a lot of electeds that don't understand how this all comes together. And I don't say that I know it all, but it took people like Jerry, it took people like Robert, and just understanding how can we get into this space better and get this information. out. We have a chamber in Fontana that is the largest chamber in this region. And all of those business people are concerned about the future too. So that may be an avenue. We work closely with our chamber, and you bring speakers because we always try to provide information to the people that are creating the jobs. And by the way, give us credit. We probably took 33,000 people off the freeway every day. They can ride their bikes to work. So 20 years ago, Mark Noemi, who was the mayor then, we all smiled when we finished our plan because every last person that was on that committee, with the exception of 2 people, were still driving to LA County and Orange County to work. And when I look at those people today, they are all working, playing, living, and becoming educated in the great city of Fontana. So when people come after me, I always say, can you give me credit for getting people off the freeway at least? And we had an air quality study before we did this ordinance to make sure we didn't leave anything out. The most embarrassing moment for me, I won't tell you, well, it's public record, it was probably almost 500,000 for this study. We utilized a group that's world known, used to be at AQMD, and the lady got up there and I'm sitting there and she goes, Mayor, I want you to know that you are surrounded by freeways. There's your pollution. You get rid of the freeways, everything goes away. But then when you look at it, the winds in Fontana, I keep telling people, good luck keeping smog there, okay? I had a cousin that came to visit me one day, and I'll never get over. She got out the car and her wig flew off, and we never recovered that wig. She had never been to my house before. She came from Texas. I was so excited. Her husband's a judge, and he got out the car and opened the door, and she got out, and the wind was blowing, and the wig went one way, and I looked at my daughter and said, go upstairs and get my gray wig and bring it down here for her. It was so embarrassing. And she said, you know, I was on the plane with some people and they don't like you. They said you brought smog and pollution to the United States. I'm going to find those people, and said, no, she didn't, because the wind was blowing so hard I lost my wig. Any questions? Wow.
Wow, that's pretty good.
That is good. Make up something, Michael.
What would be the easiest way for me to get a copy of that policy that you referenced?
No problem. He's sitting right in front of you.
Thank you. Good to see you, Robert.
Mayor, it's a pleasure. Thank you for being here with all of us. Again, thanks to Jerry and the GRU. What inspiration do you have for all of us in this room? Some of us are not from California, but are raving fans to give back and to do some good work. So how do we create this ecosystem of partners to really lean into some of these objectives? What other pieces of wisdom do you have for us?
I think what happens, people always want to talk to the electeds, and half of us have no clue. Don't let that get out. I said that.
You're being videotaped.
Oh. Well, this isn't something I haven't said to certain people's faces. You got to learn that when you come to City Hall or the county buildings, that you're talking to somebody that's looking at you as a potential work. You're bringing a task to them that they don't want to deal with unless told to do. So you have to generate interest. Chambers are the route to take, because the chambers have the people that own the buildings that we have to go to and say, hey, do you mind being a test tube on this? You need to get the business community and say, we have these products. They should have been invited to this summit. The next summit, you should invite the large manufacturers and the people that are building these large buildings. This region is the goods movement. It's been that way for 45 years or more. South Fontana is 4.5 miles from the largest cargo airport in the United States. So why wouldn't those buildings want to be there? And those buildings generated wealth for families that stuck in there, had a little house on 4 or 5 acres, and left here as millionaires. I'm researching now how many different sectors in our population, in Fontana alone, that have sold their property for progress. Up in the north, we had a history of the Klan, and African Americans weren't allowed past Foothill after 6 p.m. or could not rent or buy. And all those African Americans that were past baseline, that had all those big lots, when you go on the 210 now, and you see Costco and you see Home Depot, they sold their land and left here as millionaires. I saw a family at the car show Saturday, and the mom just came up and just hugging me, and I said, honey, I love you too. You know, I'm thinking, they love me. She said, child, we just got $3 million for our house. I said, how many acres is on it? 1. I said, what? Impossible. She said, nope. I was the last holdout in an assimilation of all this property. So these people come to our meetings talking about, oh, that you done ran everybody out of town. I said, I'd be just saying to myself, very wealthy, very wealthy. There's so many components to this picture that people don't know about or understand. And the jobs, the last time in 18 when I ran, it was my job to go around and check on signs. That's about all I was good for, I guess. I'd get up at 4 in the morning, go check to see if the opponents had tore down my signs. Then I called the crew and said, get my sign back up before everybody wakes up. There was a guy on the bus stop, and he was sitting there with a lunch pail, and I was like, oh my God, what's wrong with this man? I pulled over, I said, sir, are you okay? And he looked in the car, he said, are you the mayor? I said, yes, sir. He said, we voted for you. I said, okay, you need a ride? He said, I want to thank you. And I said, why? He said, I work across the street. I live right over here. He said, I used to drive 65 miles a day. My quality of life was terrible. I never saw my kids until on the weekend. I couldn't participate in anything. He said, now I can come home for lunch. I can get home and help my kids with their homework. And I got all my kids in all the sports programs that the parks you built gave us. And I said, oh, I'm so glad things worked out for you. He said, I come home for lunch every day. And I said, well, tell me, why you got your lunch pail? My wife told me, don't come home today. She's going shopping over in Palm Court. He said, Mary, do you know we got one of those great American Targets right here in South Fontana? I said, you know what? I've known that for years. Maybe I should tell the rest of the public. I'm just saying, quality of life is included in driving 90 miles one way to get to work. That's not the way it's supposed to happen. And we've taken the benefits of what happened with our movement, and we have 58 parks because we want to keep our young people busy, and we want people to have that quality of life. So focus on the industry giants, and you will get a better return on your time.
Let's all thank Mayor Warren. So one story I'd like to tell, Mayor, if it's okay, is one that I had the opportunity to work with your developers. So one time my operations manager comes in and starts complaining. He'd been complaining for months, going, hey, these developers are trying to cut in line on all the operation projects of the developments in terms of getting that infrastructure in. So I finally called my contacts, which at the time was Janice Rutherford, you and Mark were all on the council. I said, look, guys, I got an idea. Let's just hold a summit all together in one room, bring in all the developers, and I've got this idea. And they go, what is it, Jerry? I'm not going to tell you because then it'll be undermined at some more point during the conversation. I said, but I do need you to have some confidence in me. And they said, what is? I said, what I'm going to tell them is not going to be good news to the developer initially, but I think it'll be good news later on. And I said, I'm still not going to tell you till after the conversation. Trust me, the developers will call you after the meeting's done or at the meeting themselves. And what I found out is because of the way the developers are all trying to get the rush in, and this was in the early 2000s when there was this whole gold mine of development occurring in Inland Empire, you could literally see that each developer was jockeying to be the first and getting their projects in line. And all I had to ask was one question of the city. I said, so who's the application being filed with in terms of these projects? And they go, well, they file with us. I said, okay, so we're going to take direction from the city. And meaning you prioritize to us what needs to be built and the timing of it. That's all I'm going to say. And all of a sudden, the developers looked at me and they go, you can't do that. I go, I just did. And so, and that took the pressure off operations to say, you're only going to listen to one person. That's the city. Here's your point of contact from here going forward, because they're going to prioritize. It took about maybe 3 weeks of expediting, but by that time, we actually were able to develop a better sequence of events that take place. And things ran smoother, and I wasn't getting called all the time by the electeds. Can you rush this project? Can you expedite this? But it's that communication, it's that opportunity in working with city and municipal government that really bonds the friendships and the relationships. So I have to stress, thank you, Mayor, for all the work that you've done for the community.